Using the multi-axial diagnosis system established by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, we now know that Vincent van Gogh did in fact suffer from several mental illnesses. The first, coded on axis 1, schizophrenia. Van Gogh showed the classic signs and symptoms of schizophrenia. Van Gogh's positive symptoms include hallucinations and distorted thought processes. His hallucinations were due mostly to vertigo, which is depicted in his work by the use of swirls and chaotic lines. He also attributed lifelike qualities to his art materials, as he states in a letter to his brother Theo.
There's a soul and a life in that crayon. I think the Conte pencil is dead. That crayon knows what I want. It listens with intelligence and obeys. The Conte pencil is indifferent and unwilling.
His letters also show sufficient evidence of disorganized thought processes by jumping from one irrelevant topic to the next. Consider the following quote.
I think you will see from the figures how the studio has improved as to light. How beautiful everything out of doors is these days, don't you think so? You can imagine I am full of plans. You know that I am working on many different things.
Other examples of unorganized behavior include Van Gogh's aspirations to become more Christian-like or humble. This caused a severe declination in personal hygiene, which included a reduced ability to dress in a socially acceptable manner. These symptoms continued to worsen in the years nearing the end of his life. Also coded on axis 1 is bipolar 1 disorder. Van Gogh's bipolar 1 symptoms included major depressive episodes alternating with manic episodes. During the depressive episodes, he was in a depressed mood most of the time. In addition, there were periods where he would remain in his apartment for days at a time, which meets the requirement for diminished interest in almost all activities. Feelings of worthlessness also affected his everyday life, which is evident in one of his letters to his brother, wherein he states,
I see myself cheating the hopes of those around me, and I am ashamed.
On several occasions, he attempted suicide, one of which was his ingestion of turpentine and lamp oil. As for his manic episodes, one part of the criteria stated in the DSM-4 is that a distinct period of abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood. This is evident, again, in his letters to his brother, in which he mentions a continuous drive to improve and expand his artistic abilities and to endlessly broaden his range of mediums and techniques of painting, drawing, and sketching. Also among the criteria met is that of increased goal-directed activity, as described by the DSM-4. This part of the disorder is shown by his incessant production of paintings, sometimes as much as one per day, for as long as 70 days. He never stopped looking for a new goal, oftentimes before actually completing his current task. Another of the criteria met, as mentioned in the DSM-4, is excessive involvement in pleasurable activities that have a high potential for painful consequences. This was seen in numerous visits and sexual encounters with local prostitutes, as well as plentiful indulgence in absinthe, an alcoholic drink containing hallucinogenic properties. Coded on axis 2 by the DSM-4 is borderline personality disorder. This disorder, as described in the DSM-4, is a pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects, and marked impulsivity that begins in early adulthood and is persistent in a variety of contexts. Out of 9 criteria for borderline personality disorder, a person must display 5 to be diagnosed with the disorder. Van Gogh meets 6 of the criteria. The first is a period of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. A perfect example of this was his unstable relationship with his friend Gogh. The two lived together, but they alternated between kindness and, quote, terribly electric quarrels. The second criterion met by Van Gogh is identity disturbance, markedly and persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. This can be seen in his attempts to be more like Christ, showing problems of his own identity. The third criteria, impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging, is shown by his sexual relations with numerous prostitutes and his consumption of absinthe, both of which are high-risk behaviors. Fourth criteria, recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures or threats, or self-mutilating behavior. Van Gogh attempted suicide on several occasions, and was known on one occasion to cut off his own ear. Fifth criteria, chronic feelings of emptiness. which Van Gogh experienced throughout his life. Sixth criteria, inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. An example of this anger is when his fellow painter, Gogh, told Vincent that he was going to leave him. Van Gogh was so infuriated that he threw a glass of absinthe into Gauguin's face. Significant medical disorders are coded on axis 3, of which Vincent van Gogh had none. Moving on to axis 4, he suffered from the following. Firstly, problems with primary support group, a part of which was genetic. Aside from Vincent, the second oldest brother, Theo, was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety. Wilhelmina Jacoba, the oldest of his younger sisters, was diagnosed with schizophrenia. In addition to these two cases of mental illness in the family, Cornelius Vincent, the youngest of the boys in his family, also committed suicide. Throughout most of his life, Van Gogh also suffered from a broken heart. By the time he committed suicide, he had had 3 of his marriage proposals rejected. His separation from society was marked by his having lived alone for a number of years. He also dropped out of art school due to his inability to handle criticism from his professors. He also experienced financial problems lasting for years, during which his brother Theo provided him with some money. The DSM's Axis 5 provides a global assessment of functioning for the individual. The lowest global assessment of functioning we found for Vincent van Gogh in the months prior to his death was a number of 7, which indicates persistent danger of severely hurting self or others, or persistent inability to maintain minimal personal hygiene, or serious suicidal act with clear expectation of death, of which Van Gogh had all 3.